Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Hannah McLeod, and I've been a urologist and sex therapist here in Canada for over 30 years now. Throughout my career, I've worked with thousands of men facing intimate challenges, and today I want to talk about something that affects far more people than you might think. Did you know that between 30 and 50% of men will experience premature ejaculation at some point in their lives? That's nearly 1 in 2. And here's what really gets me. After 3 decades of practice, I can tell you that 90% of the men I see have never spoken to anyone about it. Not their doctor, not their partner, not even their closest mate. They carry this burden alone, convinced they're somehow broken or that they were just born this way. But here's the truth that your family doctor probably hasn't explained to you. And honestly, it's not their fault. They simply don't have the time or specialized training to address this properly. What I'm about to share with you today are 3 evidence-based techniques that can significantly reduce penile sensitivity and help you last longer in bed. These aren't quick fixes or gimmicks. These are proven methods based on neuroscience and sexual medicine that I've been teaching to my patients for years with remarkable success. Now, before we dive in, I want to address something important. You might be thinking, well, I've just got an overly sensitive penis. That's how I was made, and there's nothing I can do about it. I hear this all the time in my practice. Men come in feeling defeated, believing they're stuck with premature ejaculation for the rest of their lives. But in 95% of cases, that's simply not true. Let me tell you about a patient I saw last year. We'll call him Robert. He was 62, recently remarried after losing his first wife to cancer. He came into my office absolutely mortified, couldn't even make eye contact at first. He told me he was finishing in under a minute, sometimes even before penetration, and it was destroying his new relationship. He'd tried numbing creams, he'd tried thinking about hockey scores, he'd even talked to his GP about antidepressants. Nothing worked. He was convinced his body had failed him. But here's what Robert didn't understand, and what most people don't realize, is that penile sensitivity isn't usually a physical hardware problem. It's a software issue. Your nervous system is stuck in the wrong mode, and once we reprogram it, everything changes. So let's talk about what's really happening here. Your nervous system has 2 main operating modes. There's the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight response. It kicks in when you're stressed, anxious, or feel threatened. Then there's the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest mode. This is when you feel safe, calm, and relaxed. Now, here's the kicker. When your sympathetic nervous system is running the show, when you're in that stressed state, your sexual reflexes become hypervigilant. Everything gets amplified. Sensations feel more intense. Your arousal builds faster. Your threshold for climax drops dramatically. It's like your body is saying, we're in danger mode here, so let's get this done quickly and get out of here. And the thing is, you don't even need to be in actual danger. Maybe you're anxious about satisfying your partner. Maybe you're worried about your performance. Maybe you're carrying guilt from how you were raised to think about sex. Maybe you're concerned about your heart, your blood pressure, whether everything's still working the way it used to. For older gentlemen especially, there can be a lot of anxiety wrapped up in intimate moments. I remember another patient, let's call him Frank, who was 71. He'd been married to his wife for 45 years, and suddenly he was having this problem. He was terrified it meant something was wrong with him medically. Turned out, his son had recently had a heart attack during sex at age 50. Frank didn't even consciously realize how much that had shaken him, but his body knew. Every time he was intimate with his wife, his nervous system was screaming danger. His heart rate would spike, his breathing would get shallow, and boom, premature ejaculation. The solution? We needed to shift him into that parasympathetic state. We needed to tell his nervous system, hey, you're safe here. This is supposed to be enjoyable, not a sprint to the finish line. So here's technique number 1, and I want you to really pay attention to this because it's foundational. Before you engage in any sexual activity with your partner, I want you to check in with yourself. Take a moment, just 30 seconds, and notice what's happening in your body. Put your hand on your chest. How's your heart rate? Is it racing like you've just run up a flight of stairs? If you're feeling that absolute fear response, And some of my patients describe it as almost like an anxiety attack. Do not proceed with intimacy in that state. You're not giving yourself any chance of success. Your body is in panic mode, and no amount of willpower is going to override that. Instead, here's what you're going to do. You're going to practice what we call diaphragmatic breathing, or belly breathing. Now, I know some of you are thinking, oh, here we go with the meditation stuff. But hear me out, because this isn't woo-woo. This is neuroscience. This is as real as taking blood pressure medication, and it works just as reliably if you do it correctly. Here's how you do it. Sit down comfortably. Place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. Now, breathe in slowly through your nose, not your mouth, your nose, for a count of 4. As you breathe in, focus on expanding your belly, not your chest. That hand on your stomach should rise while the hand on your chest stays relatively still. You're filling your lungs from the bottom up. Hold that breath for a count of 2, then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. As you exhale, let your belly fall. Feel your stomach pull back in. That's one cycle. You're going to do this for 2 to 5 minutes before any intimate encounter, or until you feel noticeably calmer and more confident. What's happening here physiologically is really quite remarkable. This deep belly breathing sends a direct signal to your vagus nerve. That's the nerve that runs from your brain down through your chest and abdomen. It's essentially the control center for your parasympathetic nervous system. When you breathe this way, you're literally telling your brain, we're safe, we can relax, everything's okay. And when your body receives that message and shifts into parasympathetic mode, your sexual response changes completely. Your arousal builds more slowly. Your penis becomes less hypersensitive. You gain more control. It's really quite extraordinary when you see it work. Now let me tell you what happened with Robert, the gentleman I mentioned earlier. I taught him this breathing technique, and he was skeptical. He said, Doc, I've got a physical problem. How's breathing going to fix that? But he trusted me enough to try it. 2 weeks later, he came back for a follow-up, and he was beaming. He told me, I lasted 7 minutes last night. 7 minutes! I haven't done that in years. The breathing had completely changed his nervous system's response. All right, so that's technique number 1, and it's crucial. But here's where most men make a critical mistake. They do the breathing beforehand, which is great, but then during the actual intimate encounter, they forget everything they've learned. They hold their breath. They tense up. They get stuck in their head, worrying about whether they're doing it right, whether their partner is enjoying it, whether they're going to finish too quickly again. And you know what happens when you hold your breath and tense up? You guessed it. You flip right back into sympathetic mode. All that good work you did with the breathing goes out the window. The tension builds, the arousal escalates rapidly, and before you know it, you're finishing faster than you wanted to. So here's technique number 2, and this one might surprise you. During foreplay and during intercourse, I want you to breathe audibly. Make sound with your exhale. Now, I don't mean you need to sound like you're in a porno or anything like that. We're not talking about theatrical moaning here. I'm talking about something as simple as a gentle sigh or an exhale that your partner can hear. Why does this work? 2 reasons. First, when you exhale with sound, it's almost impossible to hold your breath. You're forced to keep breathing continuously, which keeps you in that parasympathetic state we worked so hard to achieve. Second, that audible exhale sends an immediate signal to your brain that says, I can relax, I'm safe. This is pleasurable, not stressful. I know for a lot of you, especially those of us who grew up in more conservative times, the idea of making any sound during sex might feel uncomfortable or even embarrassing. Many of my patients tell me they were taught that sex should be quiet, private, almost secretive, but that silence is working against you. Let me tell you about Frank, the 71-year-old I mentioned. When I first suggested this to him, he looked at me like I'd suggested he run naked down Yonge Street in January. Doc, he said, I've been married 45 years and I've never made a peep during sex. What's my wife going to think? But he tried it anyway. And you know what his wife told him? She said it was the most connected and intimate they'd felt in years. She could tell he was actually present with her, actually enjoying himself instead of being trapped in his own anxious thoughts. And the premature ejaculation, it improved dramatically. He went from under a minute to consistently lasting 5 to 8 minutes. Now, I want to give you a specific exercise you can practice. During foreplay, make a conscious effort to exhale with a gentle sound or a soft sigh every few breaths. You don't need to do it constantly. That would be weird and distracting for both of you. But every 30 seconds or so, let out one audible breath. This keeps you grounded in your body, keeps you breathing properly, and maintains that parasympathetic state. This is particularly important during the transition to penetration and during intercourse itself. This is when most men unconsciously hold their breath because they're concentrating so hard or because they're afraid of losing control. But that breath holding is exactly what causes you to lose control. So keep breathing, keep making those gentle sounds, and you'll find you have significantly more staying power. All right, so we've covered two powerful techniques: the pre-intimacy breathing to get you into the right nervous system state, and the audible breathing during sex to keep you there. But there's a third element that most men completely neglect, and without it, lasting longer can feel like an uphill battle you're fighting alone. Here's what I see all the time in my practice. Men come in suffering from premature ejaculation, and they're carrying this enormous weight of shame and guilt. They feel like they're failing as men, failing as partners. And the vast majority of them, we're talking 90%, have never spoken to their partners about it. They're trying to deal with this completely on their own, in silence. And that silence creates tension. That tension feeds the anxiety. That anxiety triggers the sympathetic nervous system. And round we go, making the problem worse and worse. So technique number 3 is this: create a sense of safety through open communication with your partner. I know, talking about sexual difficulties is uncomfortable, especially for those of us who grew up in an era where you just didn't discuss these things. But I promise you, this conversation can be absolutely transformative. Here's how I recommend approaching it. Find a time when you're both relaxed and not about to be intimate, maybe over a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning or during a quiet evening walk. And then in your own words, share what's going on. You might say something like, "Listen, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. I've been experiencing some challenges with lasting as long as I'd like during sex, and it's been weighing on me. I wanted to be honest with you about it because I care about our intimate life together, and I'm working with my doctor on some techniques to improve things." Most of the time, your partner's response will surprise you. Often they've already noticed, and they're relieved you're bringing it up because they didn't want to hurt your feelings by mentioning it first. Sometimes they're dealing with their own insecurities or anxieties about intimacy that they haven't shared either. I had a patient, we'll call him George, who was 68 and had been avoiding intimacy with his wife for months because he was so embarrassed about finishing quickly. When he finally talked to her about it, she broke down crying. Not because she was upset about the premature ejaculation, but because she thought he'd stopped being attracted to her. She thought it was her fault somehow. Once they had that honest conversation, it lifted this enormous burden off both of them. The next step is to communicate during intimacy itself. Tell your partner what you need to feel comfortable. Maybe you need them to slow down during foreplay. Maybe you need to take breaks during intercourse. Maybe certain positions or movements feel too intense and you need to try something different. All of that is perfectly okay, and your partner wants to know. They want to support you. And here's something crucial. Eliminate any expectation of performance around sex. This is a big one, especially for older gentlemen who might be dealing with other changes in sexual function as well. Sex isn't a performance. It's not something you pass or fail. It's an intimate connection between you and your partner. And that connection can be beautiful and fulfilling regardless of how long penetrative intercourse lasts. When you remove that pressure, when you and your partner agree that the goal is simply to enjoy each other, to be present together, not to achieve some arbitrary standard of lasting long enough, something magical happens. Your nervous system relaxes. When your body feels safe, it naturally regulates itself, and that regulation reduces penile sensitivity and helps you last longer. You might even discover that your partner has been feeling anxious or nervous about intimacy too. Maybe they're self-conscious about changes in their own body. Maybe they're worried about whether they're still desirable to you. Opening up this conversation can help both of you feel calmer and more connected, which benefits everyone. Now, I want to share something personal with you, because I think it's important you understand that I'm not just speaking from textbooks here. I've worked with thousands of men over my 30 plus years as a urologist and sex therapist, and I've seen these techniques change lives. But more than that, I've also seen what happens when men don't address this issue. I've seen marriages deteriorate. I've seen men withdraw from intimacy entirely, choosing to avoid connection rather than face potential embarrassment. I've seen the toll it takes on mental health, the depression, the loss of confidence, the sense of inadequacy that bleeds into other areas of life. And it breaks my heart because it's so unnecessary. This is a solvable problem. I remember one gentleman in particular, we'll call him Arthur, who was 74 when he first came to see me. He'd been a widower for 3 years and had recently met someone new, a lovely woman from his church. But he was terrified to pursue the relationship because he'd struggled with premature ejaculation even in his first marriage, and he couldn't bear the thought of experiencing that shame with a new partner. We worked through all 3 of these techniques together: the breathing exercises, the vocal breathing during intimacy, and most importantly, having that open, honest conversation with his new partner before they became sexually involved. He told her about his concerns, about the techniques he was learning, and asked for her patience and understanding as he worked on this. And you know what she said to him? She told him she'd been anxious about intimacy too, worried about whether her body was still attractive, whether she'd remember how everything worked after years of being alone. They ended up supporting each other through the whole process, and last I heard from Arthur, they were engaged and happier than he'd been in years. That's the power of addressing this properly. It's not just about lasting longer in bed, though that's certainly a benefit. It's about reclaiming your confidence, deepening your intimate connections, and enjoying your sexual life in a way that might have felt impossible before. Now, I want to be very clear about something. These 3 techniques, the pre-intimacy breathing, the audible breathing during sex, and open communication with your partner, they work best together. Reducing sensitivity is just one piece of the puzzle. You need all 3 elements working in harmony to get the best results. Think of it this way: the breathing gets your nervous system into the right state. The audible exhales keep you there during intimacy, and the open communication removes the psychological burden and creates a safe space where your body can function optimally. Together, they create a complete system for managing premature ejaculation. And here's the beautiful thing: these aren't temporary fixes. You're not masking the problem with numbing creams or medication that you'll need to use forever. You're actually retraining your nervous system, rebuilding your confidence, and improving your intimate relationship. These are skills that become more natural and effective the more you practice them. I won't lie to you and say this is always easy. Like any new skill, it takes practice. Some days will be better than others. You might have setbacks along the way. That's completely normal. But if you stick with these techniques, if you're patient with yourself and keep working at it, you will see improvement. I've seen it happen hundreds and hundreds of times over my career. For those of you dealing with other age-related changes in sexual function, maybe you're also working on erectile quality, or you're adjusting to medications that affect sexual performance, these techniques can be even more valuable. They help you stay present in your body, reduce anxiety around sex, and focus on pleasure and connection rather than performance. Remember that intimacy isn't just about penetrative sex. It's about the whole experience. The touching, the kissing, the emotional connection, the pleasure you give and receive. When you take the pressure off achieving a specific performance and instead focus on being fully present with your partner, sex becomes so much more satisfying for both of you, regardless of exactly how long penetration lasts. So let me recap the 3 techniques one more time, because I really want you to remember these and put them into practice. Technique number 1, before intimacy, check in with your body. If your heart's racing and you're feeling that anxious, panicked state, pause and do diaphragmatic breathing. Breathe in through your nose for 4 counts, expanding your belly. Hold for 2 counts. Exhale through your mouth for 6 counts, letting your belly fall. Do this for 2 to 5 minutes until you feel calm and confident. Technique number 2, during foreplay and intercourse, breathe audibly. Make sound with your exhale. Even just a gentle sigh or hum every 30 seconds or so. This keeps you breathing properly, prevents you from holding your breath and tensing up, and sends ongoing signals to your brain that you're safe and can relax. Technique number 3, create safety through open communication. Talk to your partner about what's going on, share what you need to feel comfortable, eliminate performance pressure, work together as a team to make intimacy enjoyable for both of you. These 3 techniques together will significantly reduce penile sensitivity by addressing the root cause, your overactive sympathetic nervous system. They'll help you last longer in bed, but more importantly, they'll help you actually enjoy sex again without all the anxiety and fear that's been holding you back. If you found this information helpful, I encourage you to share it with someone who might benefit from it. Far too many men are suffering in silence when they don't have to. And if you're dealing with premature ejaculation yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone, you're not broken, and this is absolutely fixable. Now, these 3 techniques are incredibly powerful, but they're just the beginning. In my next video, I'm going to go deeper into the complete system I use with my patients, the approach that helped me guide men from lasting less than a minute to consistently enjoying 20 minutes or more of intimacy. I'll share the specific exercises, the timeline you can expect for seeing results, and the common mistakes that can undermine your progress. So make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss that video. Your future self and your partner will thank you for taking this seriously and investing in improving your intimate life. You deserve to have a fulfilling sexual relationship at any age, and I'm here to help you achieve that. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.